I've decided actually, I'll do it properly. I will put the high pass filter in using the parametric EQ part of the signal chain. So at least high pass filter up to 90 Hertz. Personally, I think you can go a bit more than that. Lowest fundamental of the male human voice. You're not going to miss out on much, in my opinion. Below 100 Hertz at least. So what's this? 114. Okay, spec that down to 100. 104. That'll do. Moreover, of course, what's coming back from the front of house PA is that low stuff anyway. Monitor wedges filling in for the intelligibility. Okay, so job number 1. Does your voice sound natural in the wedges? Job number 1, part 2 is, and as well as sounding natural, have you got a decent amount of SPL coming back from the wedges even without the front of house PA system on? Can you kind of get a bit of a sense of, is that likely to be close to doing the job or not? The job is making sure the, in this case, centre vox can pitch and time. So we can get quite a bit of SPL out of these without any ringing trouble. Oh, by the way, as you notice, I had to plug my iPad in to charge. Classic. I would say we're getting towards instability at this point, and there are a couple of things I might deal with in just a moment regarding that instability. I'm sorry, but I can't help myself. I just literally have to, even though I've high pass filtered on the channel itself, it just, to me, it seems visually diligent to attenuate there. Now, more importantly, what is it we don't want? It's the boxiness that tends to happen in this situation. Around 100 and 180, 190, I'm not too excited in. I've got to be honest, well, it depends who your vocalist is. I was recently working with a jazz singer, and I did my usual thing that I do in a monitor wedge. And she's like, oh, my voice sounds so thin. And it just really dawned on me that, wait a minute, actually, this is so music quality specific. If it is a jazz vocal, then it needs to sound real warm in the wedges. If it's a wall of sound rock show, and the front of house is super loud and the stage and the back line super loud, then it's just the intelligibility that's really needed in the monitor wedges so that lead vox can pitch. So what we do with the low mids is a little bit show dependent, perhaps, in terms of sonics and natural sounding. Obviously, if there's something uncontrollably and obviously unpleasant, then we would attenuate regardless. Do you know, for me, I'm going to improve the intelligibility a little bit by cutting around here. I'm also aware that if I was just to, well, you've been hearing, I suppose, my voice, it's a ooh, ah. Even when I try to create, when I try to create some HF, it's a low mid. Whether it's resonance or whether it's just diffuse reverberation, let's not get into the Schroeder curve conversation. But basically, the room is giving me back a lot of low mid. And maybe some mid-mid as well. So improving intelligibility in general in this room is about cutting the low mid. And I've actually done that when I was voicing the front of house PA as well, although that's not one for this video. There's something else as well that I don't think sounds particularly natural. There's a couple of things that don't sound particularly natural about my voice in these wedges right now. And how well you're hearing this, I'm not sure, because what you're going to be hearing, I think, when I decide which tracks to include in the final video. I'm recording both the 58 and obviously I've got a little lav mic stuck on me, so it's going to sound a little bit different perhaps in your ears when you're watching this back than it is for me right now, but hopefully this is coming across. For me, in the mid range, I think it's 500 hertz. I sound a bit tannoy, I feel. If you want to do frequency seek and destroy exploration, then a little bit of cheeky bumpy can be useful for identifying frequencies. They'll be very careful that you don't agitate ringing frequencies too much. Certainly don't do stark boosts, though it is perhaps helpful sometimes. I don't know why I'm stood there talking to that. It is perhaps helpful sometimes to do little boosts to explore. But for me, I'm that confident that it's about 500 hertz that I don't like, that sounds a bit tannoy, and I'm just going to dip that out. I'm going to boost it actually just to clarify, because I think that is, yeah, I mean, it's that I didn't really like. How much do I want to take out? Well, here's the thing, only what I need. Basically, my strategy is take out to the point that it's obvious that I've taken it out, then stop, and put a little bit back in again until I start feeling it's a problem again. Don't overcut. Carve up the graphic, it won't sound natural. You know this. All right, okay, what else don't I like? It's a bit as, I feel also that, it's not essential to make unpleasant noises, but you are trying to emphasize various parts of the frequency spectrum, various notes, which we'll get to in a minute, but there's something else in the low mid as well that I just don't like, and I think it's about here, and okay, hey, hey, ooh, 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 and ooh, okay, so I don't think I like as well about 300 hertz. I don't think I'm a major fan of that particular sound, and I feel like there's something sort of quite nasally about this as well, something up around 900, maybe 1K, that I feel like because I'm not entirely sure about this. This isn't an instability thing. Nicely, we're talking about sonics here rather than pure fighting against feedback. So to explore this a little bit, I'm just going to push that up a little bit and decide that it isn't actually that I'm worried about, it's more like that. So I'm going to cut that a little bit. And my voice is starting to sound a little bit more natural, but to be honest, at this point, I really need to get the front of house PA on to get some, well, relativity. Are my monitors doing what they're supposed to be? Are they filling in the intelligibility that I don't get from the front of house PA, which is not giving me much back? Really below about 900 hertz, that's when it should be attenuating behind. All right, now I can just unmute the front of house from here. I have voiced up the front of house, so I know out front there's some decent SPL from this 58. I'm just going to mute the monitors off for a second just so we can, there we go, front of house is on. Hey, hey, okay, so this is what it sounds like behind the front of house PA system on. And I can tell you that's a really kind of delayed sound. It's not a great experience. A definite need for monitor wedges. In fact, I don't even like talking into that. It's just coming back off anything. The floor, the back wall as a bit of a slap, basically. Obviously, it's going to be major different with people in the venue, but so it's only going to sound better. Anyway, with a little bit of the monitors, well, not a little bit, the monitor wedges unmuted now, that helps a little bit, but I've got to be honest, the front of house, it was sounding quite natural, well, I won't go as far as quite natural, it was sounding moderately natural. It was helpful in the monitor wedges a moment ago. Now the front of house PA system's on, oh dear. It's really sabotaged monitor wedge sound, which is why it's important to get those the front of house unmuted fairly soon in this voicing up process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see what I can get away with in my monitor wedges in terms of can I boost the level in the monitor wedges. So I'm hearing more monitor and less front of house. I also want to see what point I can get the drive levels in the monitor wedges to before it becomes unstable even, and then I'll know for showtime. That should be somewhere above 0, basically. +3 would be okay, +6. If I can get it to +6 without being completely out of control in terms of feedback, then I've done really well. I don't think I will do, but maybe I could push a little bit more. Incidentally, I'm doing this a slightly uncouth way just because the desk I'm using doesn't have a remote login, basically. So I'm actually using a crossover box. Don't worry about it too much. It's just to say that this is currently not zeroed. That doesn't mean I can't get my 0 dBu at the input signal level and get my faders up to 0 on the desk. I've got them up there, but this is just basically it's basically not greatly calibrated. Okay, so I'm going to increase the gain in the monitors and see if I can get some better intelligibility from the system as a whole, but for me stood here listening, and that's helped a little bit. I've boosted quite a lot. Man, I've come up there at least 6 dB in the monitor wedges, and now I feel like I'm hearing my voice in the monitors as opposed to from the front of house, although the front of house is a little bit distracting still at this point. But there's certainly a lot more intelligibility. Because I've increased quite considerably the drive level in the monitors. In fact, I've basically put about +5 dB. I'm surprised actually that went that far, but to be fair, it has now caused classic ringing to go on. So we need to seek those ringers and maybe attenuate a little bit. We're certainly at the point where we can't drive signal into these monitor wedges anymore. It's just not going to happen and be stable. There is a limit, and there's no point just on your graphic chasing it round and pulling things out forevermore. It's just no point. You just won't sound natural, and it's chasing your tail. What I can potentially do, and what I'd be very happy to do in a venue of this size, is I will attenuate the front of house slightly, if needs be, to create a better balance between the two. I have set a decent drive level front of house. It's probably a little overkill, even though when people come in, dampening will take place because humans are pretty good at absorbing the kind of wavelengths that are intelligible in speech. But I will attenuate the front of house a little bit if needs be to get decent intelligibility on the stage, because when you think about it, if you get decent intelligibility on the stage, having the backline at a lower level is more likely, even though getting musicians to agree to turning things down is a challenge of its own. But essentially, if I can, nothing should be battling too much. It's very much a case of compromise between the different components of the system. I think maybe I'll take 3 dB out of the fader, basically, that is this mic going to the front of house PA. Otherwise, I'm just going to have a bit of a battle on my hands, really. So I'll just do that now. Okay, so I've attenuated by 3 dB on the channel fader that goes to front of house for this microphone. And now the question is it less of a battle for me when I'm listening now to my voice when it comes to the relationship between the drive levels of the front of house and the mons? And yeah, I feel like I am closer to myself in terms of sound. I feel like I can point at the monitor wedges and say that is where my voice is coming from. I'm not anywhere near as distracted by the front of house being on at this point. And just a like 3 dB cut to the front of house did that. I'm really confident actually that I overkilled the drive level of the mic out to front of house when I was voicing it up. It's fairly loud out there. Loud enough would be my best guess at this point. And there is a little bit of experienced judgment that comes into it when you've not got audience before doors, basically. Yeah, I guess that comes from doing a range of different jobs in a range of different venues to deem what is. I mean, you can measure, you can measure these things, but being able to do it by ear is usually the best place to the best way to be working, especially for when you've got to be rigging to a fairly tight schedule, especially when you're working on your own in smaller venues. That's pretty much the case. So I reckon it's decent SPL out there. And actually, not that this is really one for this video, but if you've got a space that is as quite a diffuse reverberation, quite a dense reverberation is what I mean to say. Even though it decays quite quickly, it's quite dense, which isn't helpful for intelligibility, especially when it's in the low mids, which it is in this particular hall. If I push the front of house SPL for voice much, that intelligibility becomes even more problematic as I exacerbate the resonance / reverberation of the room even more so. So working with lower drive levels for speech intelligibility in a hall of this nature is good. I feel like the relative balance between my voice in, excuse me, mons and front of house now is way better. And also, it's also worth bearing in mind, just drop the monitors back out and listen to front of house again, and then put the monitors back and think, yeah, glad I'm doing this, my client's going to be able to hear themselves way better. Now, does it sound natural and such? I thought before I just had a little bit of ringing going on, but hey, 1, 2, hey. Here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm just going to boost the drive level going. I can do this remote. I'm going to boost the drive level going into the monitor wedges to see where I can get it to before it starts being real unpredictable. And it's about there. It's really important to establish where you can take it to. You're not going to give the artist that. Certainly don't give him it all at once anyway. I always drop off about, we're on the edge, I always drop off by a good 6 dB. Give yourself some headroom to move into in the show if required. This is definitely the point where really we put too much mic in the wedges, put too much vocal in the wedges, basically. And there's no point just carving up the graphic. If you cut much, it's going to sound unnatural and therefore likely unintelligible, and you'll have to raise the overall level. You just chase your tail. So what's going then at the right? Okay, that's some serious SPL. It just can't be. We just can't achieve this much SPL without it being problematic, and we shouldn't need to achieve this much SPL at all in this particular space. So I'm not even going to bother identifying what frequencies are off there, although I suspect 600 hertz. But I'm not even going to go there with it. I'm just going to attenuate back down by 3 dB because we don't need that much SPL in these wedges. It's not feasible for one. Hey, hey, 1, 2, 1, 2, hey, hey, 1, 2. Now, if I want to investigate whether it was indeed 600 hertz, then I can use my little bumping motions to find out if it was, and indeed attenuate it down where appropriate. Okay, at this point, just to do the final work that I need to do with my monitor wedge, and there's a couple of things that are still a little unpredictable, but so that I can concentrate purely on that and get the job boxed off, I'm just going to mute the front of house and we'll bring that back in to check things off before I finish. What's nice actually with the front of house muted is that it actually doesn't sound that much different, and that's kind of what you're looking for really. You're kind of looking for a situation where front of house on or off, it's nice and understandable word intelligibility for the artist. Either way. Okay, hey, hey. Okay. I feel like 160 for me is still, it just doesn't need to be there. It sounds a little boxy. It's not aiding intelligibility, and I want this for pitching purposes. Is there anything else? You've got to be careful with your iPad, of course, because this is like wearing a cap, isn't it? And if you get people with, somebody comes out with a baseball cap on, then the short wavelength, high frequency reflections of a peak cause major problems. Indeed, my glasses cause problems. Sometimes I take them off and lose and break them. You've got to be careful with the iPad, of course. But hey, look, we don't get this perfect at this point. That's not what we're just getting. A natural sound and decent stability at likely suitable SPL, so that when the client arrives, the system's under control. They are feeling confident with how they sound straight away, and therefore confident in that you know what you're doing. If monitors are wild and all over the place as people arrive, you know, the client, the artist starts making assumptions that are probably not really fair. It's just you've not really got things quite ready yet. Make sure you do get things quite ready. Okay, so what else? 600 is still a little bit of a problem for me. And think harmonics as well, so I'd go 315. 315, hey, hey, I'm going to try my little bumping motion on there just to emphasize things. Okay, I don't like the sound of 315 with my voice there. Okay, I'm sounding a little bit more like me. I've got to be honest, this is still sounding fairly warm, really, for my voice. This particular act, that's actually fine. So, again, some of the natural and appropriate sonics does come down, of course, to particular person that you're working with. Okay, though, to conclude, what you're looking to do, of course, is try and, not easy, because you may not be a vocalist, try and recreate some of the notes, basically, that your artist is going to recreate. So I always have a go, the best I can. I, you. That's pretty much all pop song lyrics covered. I, you, ooh. Not sure about the low end still. I just feel like there's some kind of messy stuff going on there. Try and whistle 1K, I don't know. I'll just get wind blasts. Okay, so I've got some fairly decent stability. This is quite a warm sound, I would say, in these wedges. It is intelligible, but it's quite warm. Ah, hey, yo. Try some different things at this point. Try some serious SPL input stuff. So you being loud, hey, and also try some misbehaving, so being further away from the microphone, backing off. There's still some ringing going on, isn't there? What is that? What is that that's going on? Could it perchance have anything to do with 315? 315, 315 out. Yo, yo, yo. Obviously, I'm not going to leave it all the way out. I just want to try and find out if that's my problem frequency. And you know what? I don't think it is. I don't think it is, actually. I thought it was 6 before. I'm hoping it's not going to be 4. Yo, 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 yo. No, is it Ek? Otherwise, I'm just carving up the graphic. We need to be specific about what frequencies it is that's causing us problems. I think it just might be that 6, my cut at 6, hasn't really achieved everything that I wanted. And now I feel like that's more under control. So that's the one. So we're only cutting what we need to cut. And some final words on this matter. So people like to do check, check, 1, 2 and stuff like that. That's okay. They're quite good. They have a good, like 1, 2 has a good range of higher frequency content as well as some lower stuff as a mix of consonants and vowels. Consonants is where the intelligibility of the English language lives. And it's also where the transient t, p, k, t, s stuff happens, which can be momentary fluxes of high SPL, which can really send your monitors off into ringing if you've not got the situation under control. In fact, something about, sorry, that's a particularly nice thing to listen to. I would say 4K. I'm going to agitate it just to point it out, but I'm pretty confident that's 4K, and I'm going to cut it only by what I need, 3 dB in this case. In this case, should bring things under control. I also tried the pop-in penguin plosive test as well. And yeah, you know, you can check, hey, hey, and all that kind of stuff. I try and keep it as close to what I think my artist's going to be doing, which is mostly singing. Unfortunately, my singing isn't great. But finally, I try, where possible, to put in some program that's as close as possible to what's going to be happening in the show. Well, I hope this helped a little bit anyway. Let me know if stuff like this helps, and I can, you know, when I go around and do different jobs, I can, you know, run a camera across other bits of the engineering process, whether it's rigging or stuff during a show. Anyway, just I thought, because I don't know how well you could see that before, that's basically what my graphic is looking like for this particular scenario, and it will change. Be prepared. That's why graphic EQs are great for grab and go and on-stage monitoring, you know, action stations, because you can usually quite quickly get to the frequency that you need to attenuate as things progress throughout the show, as positions of things change, which they do, and also massive acoustic difference when people come into after doors. And also as temperature changes throughout the show and all that stuff. So it isn't going to stay exactly the same is what we're saying there. Final point maybe that I didn't say before, make sure you spike the stand, the mic stand, even if it's just useful to see how much the mic stand has moved during the show, and you're like, well, it sounded good when I voiced it up before, and now I can tell it doesn't sound so good, and then you find out that the centre vox has encroached, you know, a good foot further downstage with the stand, and therefore completely changing the distances and angles between the vox mic and the mons. What else would I say? Oh, reverb as well. If you're adding some reverb into the monitors, do that as part of the voicing up process, and hear your voice with it. Make sure it's tasteful for the particular genre that you're working with. But also that can really sonically affect the mons basically. And sometimes I find you know, some more metallic type reverbs kind of stuff that I don't really like the sound of, but invariably some of the default settings you get on some of the digital desks I have to find sound quite metallic for vocals. Some of the plate settings and such need a bit of extra work because they actually do agitate your classic kind of ringing frequencies, your 1.5 kind of region. Cool.